Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents A Grain of Salt, The Science and Pseudoscience of What We Eat, by Dr. Joe Schwarcz. Narrated by Jonathan Yen. Introduction. Whether it be after a public lecture, or on my radio show, or via email, questions I get often begin with, "Is it true that—" Usually these questions are triggered by a blog post, something heard on the radio or seen on the Dr. Oz show. Invariably, my answer is, well, you'd better take that with a grain of salt. That's a pretty common expression, encouraging a generous dose of skepticism. This classic phrase supposedly originated with the Roman historian Pliny the Elder, who recounted how Pompey the Great found a note written by Mithridates, king of Pontus, after Pompey defeated him in battle. Mithridates was terrified of being poisoned, and devised various supposed antidotes to use in case someone tried to do him in with some sort of toxic substance. The note that Pompey found described a concoction of 2 dried walnuts, 2 figs, and 20 leaves of rue. A grain of salt was to be added for palatability. Taking this mixture every day was alleged to offer protection against all poisons. The unlikelihood of this being effective gave rise to the notion that whatever was being taken with a grain of salt warranted scrutiny. According to the popular legend, when Mithridates' armies were defeated by the Romans, he tried to commit suicide by taking poison, but was unsuccessful because his Mithridatum had made him immune. That story, of course, should also be taken with a grain of salt, as should much of the nutritional information the media floods us with. Let me illustrate. Recently, I was asked about a headline featured on the Facebook page of an organization that goes by the name The Hearty Soul. That page has over 1 million followers, so it can have considerable impact. The seductive headline was, "Study: Eating chocolate and drinking red wine could help prevent aging." Visitors who didn't get beyond the headline, and I suspect most didn't, were likely to leave with the notion that researchers had confirmed that chocolate and red wine prevent aging. They may even have applied the findings to their own life. However, the study referenced in the article in no way showed that eating chocolate or drinking red wine prevents aging. What the researchers did demonstrate was that when cells grown in tissue culture age, some of their youthful properties are restored upon exposure to chemicals called resveratrol. But rejuvenation of cells in a culture dish is a long way from preventing aging in humans. And what is the chocolate and wine connection? Both contain resveratrol, a compound that has been extensively studied for health benefits based on some intriguing preliminary findings in rodents. However, any benefits of resveratrol in mice only occur with doses that are far greater than those achievable by food or beverage intake. That's why researchers decided to play molecular roulette and synthesize compounds similar to resveratrol, the resveralogs, with hopes of seeing greater potency at lower doses. The activity of these resveralogs was reported in a paper published in BMC Cell Biology, a very reputable medical journal. The findings are certainly of academic interest, but they have nothing to do with chocolate or red wine, neither of which contain the compounds tested. Nothing about this study demonstrates that eating chocolate or drinking wine counters aging, and the authors do not make that claim at all. But the sensationalized headlines do. This story is a prime example of the need to interpret scientific studies for the public in a proper fashion, and thereby hopefully prevent misinformation from taking flight. This is particularly challenging when it comes to food and the question of what we should or should not eat. Confusion abounds, not due to a lack of information. Quite the opposite. Virtually every day we are alerted to some new study that claims to add to our knowledge about pesticides, genetic modification, food additives, organic produce, probiotics, weight loss regimens, and an array of toxins that may be contaminating our food supply. Some raise fears, others allay them. The media often sensationalizes the findings, and bloggers with various levels of expertise weigh in, often twisting the data to suit a particular agenda. The public is left dismayed and bewildered about what and whom to believe. What regimen should be followed? Gluten-free? GMO-free? Dairy-free? Organic? Vegan? Keto? Paleo? Mediterranean? Should lectins be avoided? Breakfast skipped? Plastic packaging shunned? Are probiotics worthwhile? How about antioxidants? Vitamin supplements? Omega-3 fats? Meat? Farmed fish? Eggs? Soy? Is alcohol good or bad? The questions seem endless, as do the answers. Why, people wonder, with all the effort and money that has been spent on nutritional research over the years, is there still so much puzzlement about what we should eat? The answer to that question is actually simple. The human body is a staggeringly complex machine, and our food supply is a staggeringly complex mixture of chemicals, over 99.9% of which are naturally occurring. Predicting the outcome of blending these complexities is extremely challenging. Factor in the influence of genetics, food intolerances, allergies, biochemical individuality, and age, and you have a practically unsolvable problem when it comes to deciding exactly what we should eat. Add to this the fact that most studies of human nutrition involve notoriously unreliable food frequency questionnaires. I suspect you would have a hard time answering questions about how many apples, how many servings of broccoli, or how many eggs you consumed over the last 6 months. It is hard to remember exactly what we ate yesterday, never mind over an extended period. Yet almost all nutritional studies are based on food questionnaires that rely on such recall. Furthermore, people are likely to overestimate foods that are thought to be healthy and underestimate supposedly unhealthy foods. They are unlikely to advertise their penchant for fried foods, and seem to be so in love with broccoli that they apparently eat more than is actually produced. Certainly, we can make some educated guesses about the risks and benefits of various components of our diets, and we can come up with general guidelines for healthy eating, but unfortunately, science cannot always provide definitive answers. Pseudoscience, however, knows no such boundaries. What are those basic guidelines? Eat lots of fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. Emphasize mono and polyunsaturated fats while minimizing salt, sugar, refined grains, red meat, processed meats, soft drinks, and saturated and trans fats. This is backed up by a landmark 27-year global diet analysis published in the highly respected journal The Lancet in April of 2019. Thousands of researchers tracked premature deaths and disabilities associated with 350 diseases in 195 countries over a 27-year period, in what may be the most extensive study ever on the relationship between diet and disease. The conclusion was that roughly 1 in 5 premature deaths can be attributed to diet, with a low intake of healthy foods being a greater contributor than a high intake of unhealthy foods. High sodium intake and a lack of whole grains, fruit, nuts, and seeds were the most important factors linked with disease, more than consumption of red and processed meats, trans fats, or sugary beverages, although these were still risk factors. In the following chapters, I do not propose to provide a comprehensive treatise on food and nutrition, nor do I claim to be able to demystify all the complexities of our diet and food supply. Rather, I have chosen some topics based on questions I have been asked, and others just because I find them interesting. Each entry is meant to stand on its own, so do a little tasting. Bite into one that strikes your fancy, and feed your appetite for knowledge. But let me remind you that in the area of food and nutrition, just about all information has to be taken with a grain of salt. Fruits of the Internet. When I graduated university, my parents gave me a very special gift, a set of the renowned Encyclopedia Britannica. It had the answer to virtually every question I came across, and was fun to just browse through. The last time I picked up one of those heavy volumes was about 20 years ago. By then, the Internet and the tsunami of information it brought to our fingertips had appeared on the scene. Every day, I witness both the positive and negative power the web can unleash. I'm continuously flooded with questions that can be traced back to some item seen on the web. You don't even have to watch television anymore, because significant clips or entire programs are just a few keystrokes away. A glance at just a few of the 100 or so questions that come my way during a single week affords insight into what is on the public mind. So let's have a go. I always know what Dr. Mehmet Oz has been up to, because my email inbox boils over with questions about his latest antics. Judging by the number of questions I got about monk fruit, it was clear that Oz had been trying to sweeten people's lives with this alternative to artificial sweeteners. We love sweets, but we worry, justifiably, about consuming too much sugar, and less justifiably about its artificial replacements. The market is ripe for products that can be promoted as natural, no-calorie sweeteners. Monk fruit extracts happen to fit the bill. Legend has it that the fruit, commonly known by its Chinese name Lo Han Guo, was first cultivated by Buddhist monks back in the 13th century for its supposed fever-reducing and cough-relieving properties. Folklore also has monk fruit extending life, with claims that the counties in China where the fruit is grown for commercial purposes have an unusual number of centenarians. This has never been confirmed, and neither do we know whether the fruit is routinely consumed by the population there. Various preparations of the fruit are sold in China with claims of moistening the lungs, eliminating phlegm, stopping cough, relieving sunstroke, and promoting bowel movements. While the efficacy of monk fruit as a medicine is questionable, the sweetness of its juice is not. This, however, did not arouse scientists' curiosity until the 1970s, when expanding waistlines led to expanding markets for non-caloric sweeteners. Analysis revealed that monk fruit contained 5 closely related compounds called magrosides that are some 250 to 400 times sweeter than sugar. These can be extracted from the juice and processed into a powder to be used as a sweetening agent. Because of the high degree of sweetness, very little of the monk fruit extract is required, so it can be labeled as non-caloric. Although there have been no extensive safety studies, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration has classified monk fruit preparations as generally recognized as safe, or GRAS. McNeil Nutritionals has now introduced monk fruit extract as a no-calorie sweetener under the name Nectress. In order to provide volume and appropriate texture, the extract is blended with a small amount of erythritol, a sugar alcohol, sugar, and molasses. These contribute fewer than 5 calories per serving, which is the limit for a product to be labeled as containing no calories. I'd have no problem with trying this sweetener, and I'm sure many people who worry about artificial sweeteners will pounce on it. And people are worried about this one, sometimes for unusual reasons. I was asked whether it is true that aspartame is made from the waste of certain bacteria. Actually, it sort of is, but that is irrelevant. Enzymes churned out by bacteria are commonly used to produce chemicals. Just think of adding Lactobacillus bulgaricus to milk to produce lactic acid and thereby yogurt. Or using genetically modified bacteria to make insulin or human growth hormone to treat diabetes and dwarfism. In the case of aspartame, Bacillus thermoproteolyticus is used to join together the 2 amino acids that make up aspartame. I suspect the question was asked because of concern that bacterial waste implies some sort of safety issue. It does not. The safety of a product does not depend on the route used to produce it. It is established by extensively studying it in the laboratory, in animal models, and by monitoring its use in humans. Then there was a question about whether ripe bananas, full of black spots, have anti-cancer properties. The answer is simple: no. The Daft Banana story was based on a Japanese study reported in an obscure journal that involved injecting banana extract into the peritoneal cavity of rodents. Why this was done isn't clear. Probably because nobody had done it before. Scientists will be scientists. So what did they find? A slight increase in the animal's production of tumor necrosis factor, TNF, which, as the name suggests, can have anti-tumor effects. But it can also have negative effects, such as exacerbating arthritis. In any case, this rodent study has no relevance to humans. We eat bananas. We don't mainline them. Furthermore, the circulating email suggests that bananas contain TNF, which is nonsense. Even if they did, it would not matter, because this is a protein that would be broken down during digestion. Bananas make for a great snack, but there is no point in looking for spotted ones with the hopes of preventing cancer. Now for the really weird. A worried woman asked if it is safe to drink milk when she travels to the U.S. Why? She had heard that women who drink milk from cows treated with bovine somatotropin to increase milk production are at risk for growing mustaches. Apparently, that story came from some Russian official who claimed that American milk causes women to develop male sexual characteristics. What a load of twaddle. Bovine somatotropin is not bioactive in humans. The only mustache you'll get by drinking milk is made of milk. Next question. How do I know my answers are reasonable? Because the Internet allows me to search virtually all the published literature without leaving my desk. Clearly, the era of the printed encyclopedia is over. Although I was emotionally attached to my copy, it was taking up so much space that I decided to give it away. Nobody wanted it. A sign of the times. What's for dinner? So what should we have for dinner? It seems a simple question, but it is ever difficult to answer. Unfortunately, tasty and healthy don't always coincide. And just what is healthy anyway? For close to 40 years, I've pored through countless research papers and media accounts about food and nutrition. I've interviewed some of the world's top researchers in this area. My shelves sag with the weight of dozens and dozens of books on the subject, and this is the second book I've written myself that deals exclusively with food. My 15 other books deal with plenty of nutritional connections as well. And even after all that, I'm still mystified about what we should have for dinner. But not completely. The wheat is slowly being separated from the chaff. One thing is for sure. There's no shortage of nutritional information or opinions about what we should eat. Dr. Robert Lustig, a pediatric neuroendocrinologist at the University of California, believes that many health problems, obesity in particular, can be traced to consuming too much fructose. His video on the subject has gone viral. University of Missouri professor Frederick von Saul is of the opinion that obesity can be linked to bisphenol A, a chemical that can leach from the lining of canned foods. Dermatologist Dr. Robert Bibb, in his book Deadly Dairy Deception, makes a case for dairy products being the cause of prostate and breast cancer. Dr. Neil Barnard, president of the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, goes even further in Eat Right, Live Longer, claiming that salvation lies in avoiding all animal products. Cardiologist Dr. William Davis sees no problem with meat, but sees wheat as the real boogeyman. According to him, the grain's polypeptides cross the blood-brain barrier and interact with opiate receptors to induce a mild euphoria that in turn causes addiction to wheat. As he describes in his best-selling book, Wheat Belly, this results in fluctuating blood sugar levels that then create hunger and lead to obesity, as well as numerous other health problems. How does Davis know all this? Apparently, his patients lose weight on a wheat-free diet and recover from all sorts of diseases. Has he published any of this in peer-reviewed journals? Not that I can find. Davis would probably find a kindred spirit in Dr. Drew Ramsey, a clinical professor of psychiatry at Columbia University in New York. His book is called The Happiness Diet, a nutritional prescription for a sharp brain, balanced mood, and lean, energized body. What is that wondrous prescription? It seems simple enough. If you want to be happy, stay away from bagels. According to Dr. Ramsey, at first, bagels boost a person's energy. But after a few hours, you come crashing down looking for another fix in the modern American diet. That crash can cause people to feel irritable, lightheaded, or sad. Really? Maybe if they eat American bagels. I think legions of happy Montreal bagel lovers would disagree. Journalist Gary Taubes maintains that not only wheat, but all carbohydrates should be limited. In Good Calories, Bad Calories, he has gathered a massive amount of information to prove that excessive consumption of carbohydrates is the cause of heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's disease, and type 2 diabetes. He advises against a low-fat diet. Dr. Dean Ornish, in Eat More, Weigh Less, would take issue with Taubes. He puts his cardiac patients on an extremely low-fat, high-complex carbohydrate diet and has evidence that deposits in arteries actually regress. I could go on and on about all the dietary advice that floods us. In Soy Smart Health, Dr. Neil Solomon claims that eating soy can decrease the risk of breast cancer, heart disease, and osteoporosis. while in The Whole Soy Story, Dr. Kayla Daniel links soy to malnutrition, digestive problems, thyroid dysfunction, cognitive decline, reproductive disorders, heart disease, and cancer. Go figure. Other authors suggest that our health is being undermined by monosodium glutamate, MSG, or artificial sweeteners, or trans fats, or pesticide residues, or cooking in Teflon pans, or genetically modified organisms, or chlorinated water, or acrylamide, or phthalates, or hormone residues, or. And there is no lack of advice about how to get our health back on track. All we have to do is drink some esoteric juice, pop some sort of dietary supplement, gorge on some superfood, or eat like the Greeks or Chinese. So who do we listen to? The experts can't all be right. When I throw all the divergent opinions into my mental flask and distill the essence, I come up with something like the Okinawa diet plan. This fascinating and very well-researched book chronicles the lifestyle habits of the longest-lived population in the world. We're not looking at some mythical Shangri-La here. In the Japanese islands of Okinawa, we have our sights on a people whose unusual longevity and good health is well documented. So is the fact that Okinawans do not gain significant weight as they age. Why? Because they consume 1,600 calories a day, at least 500 less than we do. And they do this while eating half a pound more food. It's all a matter of what sort of food. No hamburgers, hot dogs, or smoked meat here, and no soda pop. But they do eat plenty of food with very few calories per gram. The lower the calorie density, the more food can be eaten without gaining weight. Basically, this means a plant-based diet. For example, broccoli, mushrooms, and carrots check in at about 0.4 calories per gram, tofu at 0.7, bread or meat, of which Okinawans eat very little, at about 3.0, and oils weigh in at 8.8. Michael Pollan, in his popular book The Omnivore's Dilemma, echoes the Okinawan way of eating. Eat food, not too much, mostly plants. Dr. Sean Baker, author of The Carnivore Diet, would not agree. Oh well. Chrono nutrition. Eat breakfast yourself, share lunch with a friend, and give dinner away to the enemy, emerged as a proverb in the 16th century. That was quite a change from the warning that physicians had been giving since the Middle Ages about breakfast being detrimental to health. You would think that by now, with all the research that has been done, we would have figured out how calories should be distributed throughout the day. Not so. In 2016, a study comparing the timing of major meals in different countries hit the headlines. In Guatemala and Poland, the largest meal is at lunch, with breakfast and dinner having equal calories. In France, Switzerland, and Italy, breakfasts are small. Suppers somewhat larger, but the biggest meal is at lunch. Swedes eat small lunches, and their breakfasts and suppers have the same calorie content. Germans, Americans, Danes, Dutch, Belgians, and Canadians eat the largest meal at night. The conclusion that researchers distilled out of these observations was that large evening meals are linked with obesity. But there are caveats. There was insufficient data on snacking, which may contribute to weight gain. Also, it may be that people who eat smaller suppers are more active, perhaps hitting the gym in the evening. The benefits of eating the largest meal of the day in the morning are supported by a 2017 study that involved over 50,000 Seventh-day Adventists. They were asked to fill out questionnaires every 2 years about their dietary habits, physical.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?